the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock we're here. Hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need, Jason Moore, rockauto.com. For those that don't know that beautiful bearded face, that's Jason Moore, host of the Fantasy Footballers, one of the best fantasy football podcasts on the planet. Local boy here in Arizona, Suns fan, as you can very well see on his t-shirt. Jason, we've been trying to do this for a while, so thank you very much for taking some time today, man.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to coming on the Locked On Suns podcast for a while now, so I'm happy to be here. Very excited.
Fantasy basketball has passed us by. Okay, I appreciate the cross pollination, the cross marketing for Brendan Clean over at Locked On Suns. Tell me about this ride for you as a Phoenix Sun fan. We'll get into plenty of fantasy football talk. Give me a little juice into the insight of you as a Suns fan and what it's been like here in the Valley for you.
Well, look, I've grown up here. I was an 11-year-old boy with tears streaming down his face when the Suns lost. Basketball was life because the Cardinals sucked. The Diamondbacks weren't here. The Coyotes weren't here. So, this has rejuvenated every inner young boy in me, and I am crazy excited. I've been going to every home game I can, going to the finals this week. I mean, look, when we're up 3-0, as we all know is going to happen, I'm flying to Milwaukee, and we're going to close that thing out. Let's go, Suns at 4.
Are you a little shocked that this was the team that made it all the way to the finals? I mean, after all those Nash years, the run and gun, the 7 seconds or less, Amari, Raja Bell, but then it's Chris Paul taking a team that's been, irrelevant and just faced with futility for so long, and then this is the team to come out of it.
No, not surprised at all. I mean, 5 years in a row with a winning percentage of 308. Yeah, you can't say you're not surprised. Nobody saw this coming. I don't care if Jay Crowder's like, oh yeah, they're good. You didn't see this coming. But everybody's gotten out of the way, and it just seems like a magical. It's the Suns year.
Oh, Jason Moore at Jason FFL on Twitter. Follow the Fantasy Footballers podcast at the FF Ballers on Twitter, the fantasyfootballers.com as well. We'll talk some Cardinals here too. But yeah, I mean, this is bonkers. And selfishly for Bo and myself, it's a nice little gapped bridge between the end of the NFL season and training camp, where, the whole shift from COVID, obviously the reason why it happened wasn't great, obviously, but the fact that there's meaningful basketball in the Valley into July when we only have 6 weeks left. I mean, it's less than 70 days till the NFL season kickoff. It's a beautiful thing all around. Cardinals fans and Suns fans are uniting at this point for the same and very different reasons.
That's right. Hand in hand, skipping down the road, giant smiles on our faces. Good time to be a Phoenix fan.
Well, you grew up here, and it was a Suns town. It was, absolutely. I mean, the round mound of rebound, that run to the finals, as you mentioned, that had tears streaming down your face. And then, of course, I mentioned the Nash era. But then, it seemed like the run with Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald, the massive playoff performance. And then the Cardinals kind of took hold of it. What is it now? Is it a football town or a basketball town?
The truth is, this is a basketball town. I love football. Football is better than basketball to me. I'm pretty much a one sport guy, even though I love the Suns. Obviously my career, everything is NFL focused. And I love it. If I could only pick one game to go to, I'm going to go to a Cardinals game. I'm going to watch football over basketball. But the truth is, this is a Suns town. Sorry, everybody. It's Charles Barkley built this sports city to our generation.
Jason Moore, let's shift here then to the NFL. So it's been a fun offseason. Maybe making the trade for DeAndre Hopkins 2 years ago seemed boring compared to what's happened this year, even though maybe the DeAndre Hopkins trade was obviously, the more pronounced move to make a team better than what they were the year before. J.J. Watt, A.J. Green, we're the same age. How big did your heart smile when you saw that AJ Green signed with the Cardinals, or if at all?
Oh, my heart shed many tears in sadness. I think AJ Green is washed. I don't think he has anything left. He had 104 targets, and if you watch all those 104 targets last season, you can easily blame Joe Burrow. The ball is just out of reach every single time. It's just out of reach. But when I watch the film, I feel like, well, he's not out of reach to any of the other wide receivers. He can hit all the other guys. If every ball is out of reach to AJ Green, it's an AJ Green problem. And so I was actually pretty upset. I'm off the belief. When it collapses for great wide receivers, especially the big-bodied wide receivers, it's over. You've got plenty of examples in the past, and even though him and Julio are the same age, like, we haven't seen any signs of Julio fading. But between the injury history and the production last year, not so much. Now, J.J. Watt, I'm much more excited about. I think he's got meaningful, impactful football for the Cardinals, far more than I believe, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe AJ Green has much left to give.
Yeah, I want to get into the conversation about where DeAndre Hopkins is as far as since he's come to the desert from Houston. Is he still, top 5 wide receiver, especially when you're drafting this later this summer? Hopefully later this summer, not too early. But as far as wide receiver 2, as Alex is kind of shedding some light on here with AJ Green. So in your opinion, WR2 for the Arizona Cardinals is who then?
It's AJ Green. I'm just sad about it. I think he's going to be on the field the most. Yeah. I think he'll be the actual wide receiver 2 in 2 wide receiver sets. I would say the next best wide receiver is Christian Kirk. But the wide receiver 2 will be, which for fantasy, AJ Green being the wide receiver 2 in real life means that DeAndre Hopkins is the guy again. That's what it means to me. He is top 5, both in real NFL and in fantasy. He's my number 5 wide receiver for the 2021 season.
He's Jason Moore at JasonFFL on Twitter, host of Fantasy Footballers, Alex Clancy, Bo Brock. On the other side, we're going to dive deep. Kyler Murray, are his rankings correct according to Jason Moore? Are DeAndre Hopkins, as he just mentioned, rankings correct projection-wise ahead of 2021? What the hell is this running back room going to look like, if anything? And I have a bone to pick with Jason Moore. It's going to be awesome. Coming up next on Locked On Cardinals. Bo, don't worry. It has nothing to do with you. But first, betonline.ag. Listen, NBA Finals tonight. NHL Stanley Cup, I think tomorrow after Game 4 last night. Major League Baseball, it's like, if I always say this, I wish that Major League Baseball was my favorite sport. It's like March Madness for 6 months. You can watch baseball from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and betonline.ag's got you covered for all of them. Get all the latest news, odds, and info for all your sporting needs, including Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and all your UFC, MMA action. I think Conor McGregor's got a fight coming up. Before the next pitch, shot, slap shot, whatever, go to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Go to the website or use your mobile device. Sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Second segment here, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Jason Moore, homegrown kid, 11 years old, tears streaming down his face when John Paxson hit the shot, free throw line extended, sweet as butter. He was more wide open than I am right now, so I probably could have hit that. The Suns have come full circle after not making the playoffs for 10 years. This is a magical run, and as his t-shirt says, he reps the rally the valley. I do have a bone to pick with Jason Moore. One of the sweetest people I've ever met until you ask him a dumb fantasy football question. And this is the best reason why Jason and the fantasy footballers are what they are. They're going to cut the crap. And they're going to tell you what they think, what is real, and they are right the majority of the time. I'm going to give you a little ditty, and I hope Jason remembers this because I wasn't ready for it. So Bo and I talk every Sunday about our fantasy football teams. I had one that was decimated by running back injury, Saquon Barkley, etc. It's a common story from last year. I had to start Corey Clement when Miles Sanders was out, and it was a Monday night game or Sunday night game against the Giants. I'm like, do I start Corey Clement or find somebody on the waiver wire? Jason very curtly, very sternly says, you never start Corey Clement. And the way he said it made it feel like there was an F-bomb in there, but there wasn't because he was being polite. But I took offense. I'm like, well, damn it. Damn it. I will not ask you any more dumb questions. Thank you, Jason Moore, for screening me into the upper echelon of question asking when it comes to fantasy football.
Well, look, I mean, that's not a bad question you asked. It was an important question because if you're gonna do something stupid, better to not. That's what Mama always said. Better to not do something stupid than to do something stupid. So ask your stupid questions. Just, have that tough skin that can handle it. Did you start Corey Clement?
No.
Good man.
Congratulations. Did I though?
Yeah.
Bo is the worst fantasy football player on the planet. So Jason, let's dive into this. Kyler Murray. Let's talk Kyler Murray, because one of the huge storylines that Bo and I have talked about, obviously, is how directly correlated is Kyler Murray running the ball to victories for the Arizona Cardinals. And we saw for the first half of last season, he was one of the best we've seen. He had MVP talks around him when they started 6-3 after the Hail Murray. A lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards, and then it kind of dissipated towards the second half of the season. You were kind of flipping that on its head when it comes to fantasy football. Is Kyler Murray a top 5 fantasy football quarterback going into next season?
Well, he's definitely a top 5 quarterback. As seen by my AJ Green takes, I try my best not to be a homer. But Kyler Murray is my quarterback 1. He's ahead of Patrick Mahomes. He's ahead of Josh Allen, ahead of Lamar Jackson for fantasy football. And you might be like, well, what? It's a homer. Except he was the clear-cut, far and away by a wide margin quarterback 1 last year up through week 11, and then he hurt his shoulder, and then he sucked the rest of the way. So it's like, do you believe that this guy who all of a sudden stopped throwing well, stopped running the ball that much after an injury, like that's the real Kyler? Or the first 11 weeks when he was on fire? You're going into year 3, kind of like what we saw with Josh Allen last year. You could take a leap forward. So, yeah, I think when you've got there's nobody, this is like what Steve Keim said when he drafted him, and he's right. He's seen people that can run as well as Kyler, better. He's seen people that could pass as well as Kyler, better. But you've never really seen anyone who can throw as good and run as good as Kyler Murray. And when you have both of those things for fantasy football, it's great because your consistency is going to be there week to week with the rushing baseline. He's going to use the rushing if the passing isn't working, in which case you have a good game. Let's say he doesn't run the ball that much this year. Well, it's because he was better in the pocket and you had a great game, a great season. So I think he's the best high-end quarterback value. I don't usually draft quarterbacks high, but he's a guy that sometimes, like you said, I'm getting him as the 5th quarterback off the board. I'm getting him in the 5th round of my fantasy football draft, stocking up on running backs and wide receivers in those first 4 rounds, as opposed to giving up a 2nd or 3rd round pick on a higher tier quarterback that I think will finish behind Kyler.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, you're saying everything that we pretty much say on a daily basis when we're talking about Kyler Murray and some of the disrespect that he gets around the country from outsiders of Arizona. I mean, even in the championship game, he has a very pedestrian performance and still puts up 15 points. His floor seems like it's very high. Yeah,
it is, because any rushing quarterback, it's stupid. I hate it for fantasy, but this is just how they score it, because they did it yesteryear. You get 1 point for every 10 rushing yards versus 1 point for every 25 passing yards in fantasy. So it's just a cheat code. A mobile quarterback, a rushing quarterback is better than a pocket passer for fantasy.
Now, before we move on to running backs, I think DeAndre Hopkins is it's a formality, that kind of conversation, where you want to put him. I mean, I'm curious about your take, but the more important part about this conversation is injury concerns for Kyler. So it's like when, you used to play with Michael Vick in NFL 2K, and he's the fastest guy on the field, but he has the better chances of fumbling or getting injured. Injury concerns for Kyler moving forward, is that a concern to take him, or you're like, you know what, anybody could get injured on any play, so you can't really think about that when you're drafting in fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm far more the latter there, because every single look at running back, right? Running back is obviously a brutal position. They can get injured. We know that from if anybody's played. Last year, of the top 20 running backs, there were only 2 that actually played 16 games. Like, injuries are just part of the NFL, and injuries are much better than sucking, because if a guy's injured and he's not active, I'm pivoting. I'm grabbing someone off the waiver wire, and I'm not having a bad performance. I'm having, not a Kyler Murray performance, but I'm pivoting to a good matchup, and I'm fine. So if you're going to get injured, that sucks. Boo-hoo, but everyone has that chance. Kyler doesn't have some kind of injury history like a Deebo Samuel or even a James Conner has that are red flags. He's just smaller, but he protects himself. Honestly, a little bit too much, but he protects himself, so I'm not too worried about injury at all when I draft Kyler.
That's interesting you say that, because I had commented on something that we posted on our Twitter account at LockedOnAZCards from Mike Tannenbaum, the failed Jets GM. From Sports Info Solutions, injury prediction tool projects that Kyler Murray was the most likely of any QB to miss at least one game. It's like, have you not seen Jimmy Garoppolo? The guy's played one full season. He's always injured. There's guys I would never consider Kyler Murray an injury risk. We point out he's elusive. He takes himself out of harm's way. I'm just not concerned about that, and it's not going to come into consideration when I'm drafting him and I've got him as the potential top quarterback off the board. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I've met those guys, and I hope that they continue to grow a great business. But I've never used that service for predicting actual injuries. I mean, I will say this: Kyler Murray, he's small, and obviously he's super injury prone. He's never he's never missed a game. Okay,
right.
So
exactly.
Okay, so he's played 16 both years. So yeah, he's probably the number one highest risk guy.
And all the games at Oklahoma the previous season to that. I mean, there's just not an injury history to take from. Let me ask you this, though. This is a big question. When you're staring down and you're getting at the back end of your draft and you're looking for some running backs so you don't have to start Corey Clement or the prospect of it, James Conner, Chase Edmonds, whose upside do you like more?
If the question is what you said, whose upside is higher, then it is Chase Edmonds, because an injury to James Conner takes Chase Edmonds to another level. An injury to Chase Edmonds pretty much will probably leave James Conner near where he was. But don't hear what I'm not saying. I would draft James Conner over Chase Edmonds because it's not entirely about upside. And the role that I think James Conner is going to establish is going to be pretty similar to the Kenyon Drake role last year. Right now, and granted it's a little early for accurate ADP data, but the average draft position of Chase Edmonds is a 5th round pick, which is a really valuable pick. The average draft position of James Conner is an 8th round pick. That's where It's like, I'm going to take the wide receivers over Chase Edmonds, and I'm going to take a guy in James Conner who maybe he's 90% of Kenyon Drake, but Kenyon Drake wasn't that good last year, and he was the running back 14. So the reason Kenyon Drake was a huge disappointment for fantasy is because he's a first-round draft pick. Maybe he fell to the top of the 2nd round. But James Conner, you're getting in the 8th, so if he finishes as the running back 20, that's a steal. You've got the starting running back for a high-powered offense with tons of goal line opportunities. I believe Chase Edmonds has had 1 carry inside the 5 in his career. He's just not the touchdown guy. So I'm going to take James Conner at a value several rounds later. But the upside, if you said one of these guys is a top 5 guy this year, well, then it's probably because James Conner got injured, which has happened before. And then it's Chase Edmonds.
He's Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers, very wildly popular podcast here in the desert with us, Alex Clancy, Bo Brock. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Coming up next, wide receivers and defense. Where the hell is this defense going to rank? Is it going to be top 5? Is it going to be bottom 15? Could kind of go one of two ways. We'll talk about both of those things. Bo, Built Bar, talk to me about it.
The protein bar, it's the equivalent of the Fantasy Footballers podcast. It's the greatest right now on the market. Best tasting, no doubt about it. You want to go to BuiltBar.com, save yourself some cash already. Get 15% off with the promo code LOCK15. And right now they've got not just the summer limited time flavors of orange and strawberry, which are fantastic, but also another new limited time flavor, which is the grasshopper cookie. And you're like, well, that sounds pretty disgusting. Grasshopper, it's a bug. I don't want that in my mouth, but it's actually like it's basically a Girl Scout cookie. It's the mint cookie. It's delicious. It tastes exactly like that. And check out this: 150 calories, 17 grams of muscle packing protein, and only 5 grams of sugar. And if that isn't something you're interested in, you've got your normal 9 flavors you can always rely upon: coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. There's a flavor for everyone. Every bar, 17 to 18 grams of protein, 130 to 80 grams or 130 to 180 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs. All amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy, all protein bars disguised as candy bars. Go to BuiltBar.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your next order. BuiltBar.com.
Oh, man. I want orange so bad. Jason, if you haven't had Built Bars, seriously, I'll buy you a box for coming on. Like, dude, they're incredible.
Okay.
Like it's with a banana or something in the morning. Like they're the best. Also,
I accept your money.
Okay, good. I don't know if you're a car guy, Jason. Please don't tell me that you are, because you're going to make me and Bo feel bad. But rockauto.com, they're my favorite to talk about. Every parent has a favorite. You know they have a favorite child. Bo has 3 brothers. I'm sure Bo is the favorite because he had the best hairline. Rockauto.com, it saves you from going to a chain storefront. It's a family-owned business. They've been online for 20 years. It's easy. rockauto.com. Search for what you want. They don't upcharge you if you're not a manufacturer, which is fantastic. You don't, again, have to go to a chain storefront and say, hey, excuse me, ma'am or mister, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. It's not awkward because you can do it from the comfort of your own home in your basketball shorts. Prices are reliably low. Go to rockauto.com. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, final segment here. Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers at JasonFFL, fantasyfootballers.com. Is that right? Or thefantasyfootballers.com?
Either of them work, so it's
Beautiful.
up to you. I mean, we are
Beautiful.
the fantasy footballers, though.
You are. Local product here, huge Suns fan, Suns in 4. His words. Jason, the running back room, as Bo mentioned, it's muddy. You know, it's just kind of, you don't really know. You kind of wish you could have both of those attributes in one running back, but the Cardinals are splitting them into 2. I agree with you about James Conner. He's going to fall into the end zone probably more proficiently than what Kenyon Drake did. There were a lot of first and goals from the 3 that turned into 30 goals from. Yeah, but Bo, he could have had 15. I mean, there were so many. Like, it was partially play calling. You had Kyler Murray probably stole 5 of them from him, but I feel like James Conner is more proficient from just taking the A gap and just running over the center. I think Rodney Hudson will help him a lot regarding that. We'll see what happens with Chase Edmonds between the 20s and in the passing game. When you have DeAndre Hopkins as your bona fide wide receiver 1, he's a target monster, and you know that. Just tell me quickly where you have him ranked for 2021 projections across the NFL.
I have him as the wide receiver 5 behind only Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley, and Stephon Diggs.
And you know what's so interesting about those guys, Jason Moore? My favorite stat from the offseason, which puts a negative light on Cliff Kingsbury, is Devontae Adams had more red zone receptions than DeAndre Hopkins had targets. And that's something that just can't happen. Now, you have him as top 5. With AJ Green, could you see him, if healthy, getting 8, 9, 10 targets a game as a wide receiver 2 with that huge share that's still up for grabs?
No, I don't. I think that there's going to be an absolute clear alpha wide receiver 1 in DeAndre Hopkins, just like there always has been since DeAndre Hopkins emerged as a star back in the day. When he came to Arizona, it was like, okay, it's a new team, it's a new scheme, you don't know how it's going to fit in, and then lo and behold, he did what he's done his entire career. It's going to happen again this year, and when you get near the red zone, if they're going to throw the ball, it's probably going to be to DeAndre Hopkins. But again, the bad play calling, they just love to run it up the middle and say, oh, let's try this again and again and again. Thank goodness we have Rodney Hudson. It might actually work this year, but I don't see high touchdown volume for AJ Green. I've got him currently with 4.5 touchdowns as my projection.
It's rough. That's real low there. So, I mean, as far as targets within the red zone, there's no tight end on this roster that's a pass catcher. Max Williams is known for his blocking prowess. We mentioned AJ Green, Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk. Who's a sleeper in your eyes? Is there any? I mean, it's pretty top heavy. I mean, we know what you're going to get from the proven commodities. Anybody that you're eyeing, and if you say Andy Isabella, I'll swing at you? I mean, is it?
I can't imagine Andy Isabella being on the roster.
Right.
When they draft Rondale Moore, that's saying, okay, well, you swing and you miss, you get up, you swing again. Rondale Moore was a really, really exciting prospect. My notes when I studied him was just, man, I love this guy. Man, I love this guy. Oh my gosh, this kid's blowing my mind. I loved it. And I really wanted him to go to a place with a great offensive mind, a great play caller. I was super disappointed when he came to the Arizona Cardinals because I don't believe in Cliff Kingsbury as a offensive play caller. Personally, I think that he's overblown from some of his college days. If I'm wrong and he uses Rondale Moore correctly, Rondale Moore is absolute electricity. And you get around the goal line, if you've got the threat of the run up the middle, the Kyler rollout, and then the speedy little demon of Rondale Moore that can go anywhere in between that, he would be my sleeper breakout. I don't project him to do it because, again, I think he's probably going to be misused. I think Andy Isabella was misused. I think he could have done a lot more than just jet sweeps. And if that's what they end up doing with Rondale Moore, then we'll be disappointed in him. But he has the talent, and this offense certainly is one you want to target for fantasy because you expect a high pace of play, you expect a lot of points. So those two things could come together and make magic in Rondale Moore.
All right, Jason Moore, one more here. Let's move over to the defense. This is going to be exciting. I've gone on record, Bo, and I've talked a lot about it, that in real football, if the defense is the strength of this team, there's no reason Cliff Kingsbury needs to be here, because what's the point of him being here if the defense is the strength of the team and Vance Joseph is leading the charge? Do you trust Vance Joseph to get the most out of this defense opportunistically and sack-wise to make them a viable top 10 fantasy football defense?
I trust him enough. I'm not a huge believer, but he actually won me over towards the second half of last year when he was dealing with injuries a lot. I was very disappointed. Obviously, we all wanted to see Isaiah out there more and utilized and understand how to use a weapon like that on the defensive side. But it took a couple of injuries for him to start scheming and manufacturing pressure. And I thought he did a great job at that. So now going into another year with the majority of those players and understanding the scheme a little bit better, I'm excited to see what could be. Obviously, our cornerbacks are just, oh man, they're atrocious. But we're hoping that they are bailed out by the pass rush. So can it be a top 10 defense? Yes, I think with Vance Joseph it can be. Will it be the strength of the team? No. Kyler and the offense will be the strength of this team.
It's got to be.
Man, yeah. It's got to be. Ryan, or Jason, sorry. Thank you so much, man. This has been, I don't know, I was thinking about my other job. Thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I know you're busy. I know you had to drive down to the studio to pop on with us. Please, everybody, at JasonFFL, fantasyfootballers.com. Like, you guys are the best in the business, by my account. Real, fun, funny fantasy football podcast where if you draft Christian McCaffrey and he gets injured, you may see Jason Moore slowly snake his way out of his chair on video, and you get to watch that for your enjoyment. Real quick, non-Cardinals related, give me your number one overall pick in PPR and your sleeper of the year, putting you on the spot because I didn't ask you about this before we went on.
My number one overall pick is Christian McCaffrey. I think it's obvious he's so far and above every other player that you could play in one single slot. Even the 3 games we saw last year, he was the running back 1 over those 3 games. So I've got no worries about that, no worries about the injury. If you're talking about sleepers, I'm not going to go super deep here. We gave Rondale Moore, but the one guy that I think has more breakout potential, and I think could be one of those guys. It's like if you're talking about the early middle rounds, who could actually be the running back 1 who isn't being drafted like that? I think it could be Cam Akers taking over the Todd Gurley role with a souped up offense, unfortunately, in our division. But he's got extreme talent. We saw that in the playoffs last year. So he's a guy that I expect to outproduce where he's being drafted by a wide margin.
Put it in my veins right now. I want to draft right now.
I know. Fantasy football, yeah.
Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Jason Moore from Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Check them out at JasonFFL on Twitter, the Fantasy Footballers or fantasyfootballers.com. They're the best in the business. Jason, thanks so much for your time, and we will talk to all of you